Howdy, welcome back to the shop. Doing a little follow-up video on the 99 Blazer here. This applies to about all S10s. So I did a hinge repair on this door here in the last video, or maybe the next to the last video. I'll put a link in the description or put a card up or something. Anyway, I think it was called Door Hinge Repair, and it's about 2 videos ago. So I've got that done, and you can see the little seam line, whatever you want to call it, trim, pinstripe, whatever you want to call that, is lined up. I'm very proud of that. So the door has no sag in it anymore. Now, I did have to adjust that door, and it is not for the faint of heart. You can see a little bit of a booger hook down there on the bottom of that door. I don't know exactly how it happened, but at some point before I bought this truck, that bottom corner was bent plumb like that. It was just bent plumb around. So I just kind of beat on it a little bit, and then when I was painting the rocker panel, I took and just touched all the bottoms of the doors up. Looks okay until you get it out in the bright sunlight. There is some blemish to it. It is what it is. It's a lot better than it was. So let's go look at the door pins. So this is the upper door pin, and you can see it as good as anything. I've got my camera mount is all in the way here, so I can't do you very good justice. But there's what it looks like all put together. I have shot a little bit of grease through my grease hole. You know, with what I had to start with, this came out pretty good. If you'll remember from the previous video in the series, that upper hole on the door side was wallered plumb out. I mean bad wallered out. So with this amount of repair, I was tickle pink that everything actually worked. Now let me back up and we'll take a look at the striker area. Before we look at the striker, let's look at this. If I can keep from whacking the camera. So you can't see it in the camera, but there is absolutely no slop in that door. I mean zilch. That's better than any door I've ever fixed on one of these Jimmies or Blazers. There's just absolutely no slop in that door. So this is the original striker. It had been kind of rigged up a little bit. What happens is the back side of this, when the door hinges fail and you're slamming the living thunder out of the door, it cracks the steel out right behind this. There's a similarly shaped piece inside of this B-pillar that's got the nuts affixed to it or made into it that allows a little bit of adjustment. There's nothing that holds it there, so when you take both bolts out, it falls all the way to the bottom of the B-pillar, and there's some styrofoam stuff down in there to catch it. But you need to take this piece of trim off and get your fingers up inside of here. There's a big hole right in this area, and you can take that bracket off from the back side with a pair of long needle nose pliers. Get in there and then take this off and still drop it all the way down to the bottom. But you can see here I've welded in, this is a piece of 3/16. I welded it in, ground it kind of flush and flat, and it is a little bit touchy when you're doing this repair because you don't know exactly how much everything's been tweaked and whacked. The door closes great, but it is kind of touchy when you're trying to get the holes lined up right to drill the holes. There's nothing that I can find to measure to. I just kind of use the WAG system. Take the piece of steel that came out of here, I just put my patch panel up here, scribed around the outside of it with a carbide scribe, and then held my piece of broke steel up in there and then traced it from the inside as good as I could and just hoped for the best. It came out pretty good. I had to take a die grinder and cut about a 1/16 of an inch out to give myself a little bit of extra wiggle room. You can see that shadow right there. That's where the original holes were. I had to go down and in, down a 1/16, in, or down 3/32, in a 1/16 to get her to line back up right. But that's no big deal. It came out much better than I actually expected. Okay, so these doors are adjustable if you've got the cojones to do it. Now, when I put this thing together, you know, on account of all the wear and everything, and I was just using WAG system to get things lined up when I drilled for the new pins and the new bushings, there was some error in that. So the way that I've always seen and heard, I haven't seen a better way of doing this, and if there is a better way, I'd like to know it. To align the door hinges on this, or align your parting line and your margin and your trim and get everything aligned and tweaked right, the only way I know to do that is you take a 2x6 or something, big piece of wood, lay up underneath it here, and you put your floor jack underneath of it and jack up on here, being very careful that the fender and the door doesn't get pinched together, because you're going to move this door a bunch. But you jack up on there and you go down in this hole behind this trim panel with your hammer while there's a lot of pressure, and I mean you're just about to pick the car up off the ground. But you go behind there from the inside and you take a little ball peen hammer and you peen around where that hinge welds into the door, and it'll stress relieve it, and it'll allow that door to creep up just a little bit. And 2 or 3 tries of that, and I got this door to where it shuts and aligns and everything is tight and right. When I started, it was down about 1/4 of an inch, and you could tell by the margin along the rocker panel that something was bad wrong, and this trim right here was misaligned by a good 3/16 of an inch. So I didn't film any of that because really you don't need to hear me saying the kind of words that I was saying at that time. So anyway, it did come back. I was able to tweak it and make the door close right, or shut and be aligned right. Now I did that before I put the striker and the catch on, because your striker and catch will move that door a little bit, but I wanted that door to be in its natural position, unsprung, and close to the right, give me the right margin and alignment. I hope that makes sense. You want to align the door before you put the striker on it. That's about all I can think of. There was a few more questions asked, but I've forgotten about them now. I did not put the detent. You got a spring detent up in here. I think I mentioned it in the first video, the spring detent, the way that the head of the bolt and everything sticks down, there was no room for that spring detent. It is what it is. At least the stupid door opens and closes. You just got to be careful. Actually, you have to tell your wife to be careful not to fling that door open and rip it off the hinges, because those hinges will eventually, if you whack them hard enough times, they will eventually bust out of off the A-pillar or come out of the door. So that's about all I got on this one. Till next time, y'all drive safe, watch for deer.